Hello everybody and welcome back to the Matt Fryer Golf Podcast. I'm Matt Fryer, your host, and today we are not joined by Tom Fearon, your co-host. We have none other than Adrian Fryer, my father. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Many thanks. I'm not bad. Overworked, underpaid.
Aren't we all? We all? So we aren't on our normal location today. We have travelled up to Bonnie, Scotland, and we are in the home of golf. We are at St Andrews, and we're actually sat at the moment in the captain's room at the Duke's Golf Resort, which, if you don't know, sits just above the town of St Andrews. If you're watching the video podcast, you'll see the window behind us, and we're pretty much looking down on the 9th green of the Duke's Golf Course and then out over to St Andrews, and it is a spectacular view, especially when the sun is shining just like it is today. So a big thank you to the Dukes for having us here today, and we're off out to play a little bit of golf shortly, a couple of matches and some tips and things like that. How are you feeling about the battering you're about to witness?
Well, we'll play it by ear, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've played a few holes on the course, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, but it was in January and very cold and a dreek day, as they say up here in Scotland. So I know they've spent a massive amount of money on it, and it's a great, well, obviously designed by Peter Thompson, 5 times Open champion. So it is. I'm really looking forward to enjoying the course and hoping I can do it justice and play well enough to batter you.
Well, that shall be seen. So for those that are listening or watching and they haven't seen you on our channels before, just give us a brief history of Adrian Fryer, Dr. Golf, if you will.
How long have they got? Well, obviously I'm a PGA pro, as you know. Been involved in professional golf since the late 70s.
When did you start teaching?
Oh, about 1978, 79. My first assistant pro's job.
Wow, so what's that? 70,
what are we now?
45 years ago.
46 years, yeah. My birthday next week, by the way.
I know.
So, viewers, if you want
to send you well wishes. Yeah. Happy birthday, HB, as the kids put now. Mm-hmm. So 45 years of teaching, and was it all at a golf club or driving ranges or?
No, in the early days, the private golf clubs, being assistant pro at 2 or 3 courses, and then a club pro at Chorley Golf Club in Lancashire, Hall at the Hill, as they call it, where just the year before you were born.
Yeah.
And then that was the early 80s, yeah. And then the pro at Warrington Golf Club for 3.5, 4 years, and then a large driving range operation, kind of 2-tier, big 60-bay range in 91.
And that was the...
I know you said on... No, it was a second, actually.
Was it?
I know you said on your podcast. I didn't want to correct you, but yeah, second at the time, and particularly in the northwest of England, there's only one in London of that size. So that was exciting, times for us, and a great venue. So I was there for 20-odd years. And then a couple of other driving range in Widnes, TrueFit, and then moved on to where I am now, Liverpool Golf Centre, which is a very busy, obviously in a busy town and busy place, still teaching. Yeah. 5.5, 6 days a week, solid, seeing everything that a human could possibly do with a golf club in 40-odd years,
And some work in magazines as well?
Yeah, that, in the early, late 90s, early 2000, about 1999, 2000, I started a bit of magazine work with Golf World and then Today's Golfer.
Golf World, that's not going,
still going, yeah. Well, it's part of the kind of our media group and part of Today's Golfer, but Today's Golfer is the big selling magazine, which is great, and I'm very lucky. I've been fortunate to write instruction articles with them for 20-odd years.
Wow.
And that was, we did do video in the early days and didn't realise at the time how big YouTube was going to be. We did it as an aside, really. And people say to me, why didn't you do that? Why don't you do what Matt's doing? And I said, well...
Not got the face for it.
Exactly, not only got the face for radio, and as they say. And, we didn't know at the time the internet wasn't a big thing 20 years ago. And so, obviously, we still create some great content. It's still a great publication for anybody who wants to get it digitally or in supermarkets and
No free
so
ads.
on. No free ads,
No
exactly.
free ads.
So, but it's great. But it's a kind of forerunner to YouTube. But of course, people can get golf help and golf information in multiple channels, can't they, these days? Which is fantastic. It's great access for people.
Yeah, I think it's opened the sport up tremendously, really.
Incredible.
It's done a lot. Before we get into, I think having you on the podcast is great. We'll get a lot of great information for, anything, because you've taught from, tour pros all the way to beginner golfers, haven't you? So we'll dig some information out of you. Before we get into that, though, St Andrews, obviously up here, we're here for a few days, you're going home tonight. Just tell us a little bit about your St Andrews experiences. When was the first time you came, playing the old course? Why is it so special?
Oh, it's just, anybody who's a golf nut, when you come here, you just can't believe it. The history is just mega. Obviously, with yourself, we played 3 or 4 years ago, and that was a great opportunity, and with your good pal Danny Maud and your dad Brian, it was brilliant, and that was just a really nice.
Was that your first time on the old course?
That was my first time playing the old course.
Yeah.
Now I'd visited, obviously my partner's from Scotland, and I'd visited St Andrews many times, kind of passing through and on tours of Scotland and so on, and stood by the 18th green and stood in the old grey tune and enjoyed it, but not appreciated or had the chance. Obviously played many championship courses prior to that, but not had the chance to actually enjoy it. Obviously, the first time was to actually enjoy the old course was with you. Since then, I've been back half a dozen times, and coming back again in February. I bring 5 or 6 of my kind of keen students, and they do a fantastic winter offer here. Yeah, where you can get the old course and a couple of others for £200, and obviously you've got to apply and be lucky, but it's just brilliant. Okay, you take your chances with the weather, but even just to be in the town and be around everything that is golf, it's hard to explain. Obviously, if you're a footballer and you go to Wembley, or for the UK citizens, or the Oval, but it's just unbelievable. The place, the history, when you think this is where the game, it started, but the rules, and then you think of the first Open Championship, not the first. I was at Prestwick, of course, but then the 1870 odd, and the history is just it's hard to explain. Yeah, it's hard to explain. Obviously, it was great to play with you, albeit in the rain. And
do you know that's the only time I've played? I think 6 or 7 times on the old course. Most times have been like between November to April time. We played the first week of June or end of May.
It was end of May.
I've played another time in summer. That was the only time I've played the old course in rain.
I know. And I was
and it was the height of summer, supposedly.
I talked to one of my students this week, and I'd seen him on social media in the rain, and every year we've been since. We've come down the 17th and the 18th, and it's been cold, obviously 1 or 2 degrees. We've had our bob hats on, but the sun's been out, and we've just said, how good is this?
Yeah.
You're striding the same fairways that old Tom Morris, Willie Park, Bobby Jones, Benno, Nicholas.
Tiger, everybody.
Yeah, Tiger, Nicholas, and all the greats of the game. You stood on Seve and whatever, you stood in the actual footprints of, there's very few sports you can do that, and then just soaking it up. And it's not changed a lot since then. And, and I've been lucky enough, as I say, to coach a couple of guys who've both played in the Open Championship, both at St Andrews. So that was
who's that? Scott Arnold and
Phil Archer.
Phil Archer.
Yeah, and Phil, unfortunately, that was a year.
I remember that.
That was awful, the weather, But then Scott, obviously, in 2015, and of course he made the cut, tied 40th and shot 65. I think last round tied Zach
64.
Johnson. 65, I think it was.
Was it?
Yeah, last round tied Zach Johnson for the low score on that day. So it was a great player, great lad, and that's just one of the nice experiences I've had here.
Brilliant. And
as well as duffing you today.
Wow. Have you been out on the Dukes? Have you said once you've played?
Yeah,
here?
Just once. Only played a few holes. One winter, as I say. And I say it was a dreary cold day, so I didn't see it at its best. But obviously I've seen it and followed you, and I say the investment they've had, it looks fantastic looking out there.
Yeah, they've spent a lot of money and they're going to refurb the clubhouse as well throughout this year as well, which is going to be one heck of a place to come once it's done. I've seen some imagery of it and it looks fantastic what they're going for. But we were just chatting to the pro, Graham, or Minty as we know him, and he was just saying the greens are absolutely pure. So even just looking out the window, you can see 9 and 18 where we're sat, and they do look good from here. So I'm excited to see it. You've not played from 15 onwards, have you? Did you play 14 holes?
Yeah, I think we played 14. Yeah, we were rushing round to get through the light.
16's a great par 3, really tough. 17's a good par 4, very, very tight drive-ish, and then narrow green to enter. And then 18's a great finishing hole. But I think one of my favourite holes in the whole of St Andrews, like I said earlier, we're just above the town here, but we're only, I think it's 2.1 miles from the Old Course Hotel, so only about 1.8 from the centre, from the first tee of the Old Course. But I think one of my favourite holes, the third, the par 3, is out there. I think that is one of the best holes.
Just slightly downhill, isn't it?
Yeah. You can play anything from like 120 to about 195 off the back tee, and the green cambers from back to front, and they can stick some real devilish pins on it. And it's a fantastic little golf hole, so I'm excited to get out there. Just before we move on to some coaching stuff, the first time you hit a tee shot on the Old Course, talk us through the nerves and what the shot was like.
Do we have to?
Yeah.
All right. Well, the first, I think, obviously was with you, as I say, when we played, and to be honest, it was a bit of a hurried affair. Obviously, I'd excited about being just in the town, but at the time, Rick was here. Rick was up filming, and I was, obviously I've known Rick. I've worked with you and different things over the years, so I was just on the putting green. It was cold, I remember, windy and cold, and I was just chatting to Rick. We were just talking golf and what have you, and then you said, "Come on, we're on the tee." So I kind of hurriedly got on the tee, had a couple of swishes. I think we had about 5 layers on. And I don't know, we must have been into the wind that day, because I hit my little 4-wood
off the left.
Wood, yeah. And since then I've hit driver many a time into the draft, because that hole on a cold winter's day plays a lot longer. But I hurriedly hit a little 4-wood, 5-wood, halfway up the ball, I think, and managed to skin it down the fairway. But obviously, again, as I said, just standing there, now having been several times, and I'm a bit more relaxed and can just soak up the atmosphere. And
does out of bounds ever come into your mind on that? It's the widest fairway in golf, but you stand there and think, please don't hit this out of bounds.
I can see why people do, and obviously we know historically, Baker Finch hit it left there, but you can see on the right how the burn.
I get right.
Yeah, I get right, and if the wind's hard off the left and there's that little bush, I just aim at that bush, and fortunately, the other 4 times I've played it, I've whacked it down the middle, but the challenge isn't over then.
No.
Because then you might have, 120, 130, 140 or 50 into a cold wind some days. I've hit 6-iron in there.
Yeah.
To make, because you think, I don't want to dump it in the burn. Last time I know I hit a good drive, and I had like 130, but it was into a hard wind, and I thought, I'm going to hit 8-iron here, because there's no way I'm leaving it short. And
fatted it into the burn.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you a little story, one of the kind of Peter Thompson story, how true it is. And someone said to Peter Thompson, 5 times Open champion, a great tactician, great golf mind, obviously. And someone said to him, you've never made 3 at St Andrews in all the times you've
on
played.
On
the first, you've never made birdie 3 on the first in all the times you played. And he said, yes, because I never tried. And he didn't mean that arrogantly. It just wasn't in his plan. The way I read into that, was I've just got to knock it down, knock it over that water.
Yeah.
It's a bit like Hogan used to say, well, you hit that there. Well, that wasn't in my plan. He had a strategy.
Yeah.
And he said, I never tried to make 3. Obviously, the first hole there, if you watch the Open coverage, how many times do you see world-class players dump it in the burn?
Oh, God, yeah.
They put the flag a bit near the front, and they're a bit nervy, you catch a little heavy,
Yeah.
And
A little
so
bit thin, spin it back in.
I get it. You just want to get it on the green, get your 4, get out of jail, and move on and enjoy the rest of it.
And breathe.
Yeah.
And breathe. as
Yeah,
you
but
do.
going back to your question, hitting it out of bounds. I mean, all those things. When that wind's off that left, and if you leak one, definitely, and it is wide, the fairway, obviously. But
Some of the caddies, we were chatting to them when we've been in the bar sometimes afterwards, and a couple of them have told me that they've had guys and girls that have been that nervous that they've had them put it off the first.
yeah,
Said
yeah.
like you're not going to make contact. Like the ball's on the
yeah.
ground here, just whack your putter, and obviously it's a flat fairway, it's
Hybrid or
bouncy.
something, yeah, you can just
you'll get down
put
to where
it
your
down.
driver would be anyway.
Yeah.
But that'd be one to see if you watch someone teeing off with the
I
putter.
I get it. For many people, it's
It's a big moment.
Yeah, they've looked forward to it for years and can be really nervous, can't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that is a good look into the nerves of St Andrews and the magic and mystique of it.
Yeah, incredible.
Now, as you said, you're a PGA golf coach, been coaching for about 45 years, we
100
reckon.
years, yeah.
I've made a couple of statements on the pod, I think, in the past that I think you've probably given the most golf lessons in the world ever.
I think that's a broad statement, but I know I just did a feature for Today's Golfer, and probably I've done about 90,000 lessons. I mean, there are lots of dedicated golf pros on the planet who have done similar amounts,
Yeah.
or same as me. I'm sure. Foolishly, otherwise I've done it kind of 6 days a week, 8, 9, 10 lessons a day over the years, just because of the venues and the style of
Yeah.
my business, if you like. I would like to change that a little bit. Some of it's driven by the model, but I'd love to kind of play more with my students. I'd love to, but it's a different thing, so for your viewers overseas and living, say, in the States, and different types of tuition out there and
Yeah.
so on. But in the UK and at driving ranges, and venues where you've got a coaching bay and different things, and you can do the volume. But yeah, I've given a hell of a lot of lessons to a hell of a lot of people, a hell of a lot of standards. From beginners, ladies, gents, juniors, tour players, and what have you. I'm very lucky.
And looking at all these lessons and what you've seen over your years, a couple of things that we wanted to pick your mind with, and maybe give a little bit of an insight to the player listening or watching this. Average handicap's around about 18 now in the world, isn't it? Something like that. If you were looking, not from a golf swing, which obviously in a bay you would see a lot of that, you're trying to fix the golf swing. If you were looking outside of golf swing, and you were looking at just improving a player, where do you think a lot of golfers could see, drastic improvements, not like, drop 10 shots in one round, but, picking up 3 or 4 strokes in a round? Where would you see that there's probably some basic things that a lot of golfers don't do, that if they just thought, I'll put this into play, it's going to change, scoring and how they perform out on the course?
Yeah, I think obviously, as we know, there's different debates of how much the golf swing is part of playing golf, as it were. 10%, whatever, and how much is mental and how much is preparation and practice and the emotional and psychological side. There's no doubt about it. You look at tour players, they can all hit it. That's why they're there.
Yep.
So the kind of mentally strong players, or the ones that are most prepared, and some are very analytical, like your Matt Fitzpatrick's and so on. And so everybody has different ways of performing. But from an amateur golfer's point of view, kind of other than working on your technique, which we'll talk about, there's so much you can learn about the psychology of the game, and expectation management's a massive thing.
Yeah.
In golf, because what people think they should be able to do and what they actually do, is a different thing. And I think the problem is with golf, it looks easy and actually isn't.
No.
You watch it on telly, you think, oh, it looks easy. And the boys at my work and the pros, I've got some good friends who are all coaches, we're all golf nuts, as it were, from a coaching point of view, and my pal Neil and Stephen. In fact, I played with them last week, and my pal Dave Colt was head of the training for the UK PGA, and we discuss kind of a lot about the performance and what makes golfers tick. And we were on Monday in London just talking about this, but they laugh at me because I'm quite hard on my students, but in a realistic and hopefully a nice sort of way, because I had a guy last week, and he's a 15-14 handicap, and he's moaning that he's not hitting every shot perfectly and out of the sweet spot. And I'm saying to him, listen,
fix me now.
I'm saying to him, listen, this is not as easy as it looks. And I kind of use this analogy sometimes, and I don't do it to belittle people, but I say to him, if I gave you 4 years training every day, do you think you could run in the Olympics or as fast as Usain Bolt? And they go, well, of course not. I say, well, what about snooker? I'll give you 4 years of playing snooker every day. Do you think you could play in the World Championship? And they say no. And then I say, well, if I gave you 4 years hitting a golf ball, why do you think you should be hitting it like Rory McIlroy in 3 or 4 years? 320 yards, what you see on television.
Golf is easy. Fix
Yeah,
me.
it looks easy, but it isn't that easy. To develop the skill acquisition to hit a golf ball well, the repetition, the motor skill element, before you even talk about course management, before you even talk about handling your nerves, your emotions, because even like you playing on YouTube, you are, and Rick and Peter and Mark Cross, all these guys, you're bearing all. That's harder than actually being a tour player. Tour players are playing for a living and the cameras are on everybody. You're actually there, warts and all, as they say. And I find it nerve-wracking filming these things.
Yeah.
Because you know you're being judged to a degree. And now, an amateur golfer feels that when they go on the first tee.
Yeah.
They stand on the first tee, and what most people say, I want to be more consistent, but they just don't want to make them a fool of themselves. You go and play in a competition with your friends, or you're invited to play in a corporate event, or you're playing with some other ladies or whatever, different things. You think, I just don't want to make a fool of myself. I don't want to look stupid. I want to be proficient. You don't necessarily want to be a world beater.
No.
You just want to move that ball along and make solid contact. That's half of it, making solid contact and move it along. So going back to your kind of original question, psychology, my great pal who, going back to today's golfer in 2000, my great pal Carl Morris, a sports psychologist, mental coach, who's
taught a few major winners.
Darren Clark, Louis Oosthuizen with his red dot, and Graham McDowell and Alison Nicholas, many more, as well as having a fantastic. I know you think you're probably going to have him on as a guest on your show, but great podcast show, and I would urge anybody to listen to those. These are things you can do off course.
Yeah,
I listen to every one of them, and there's some, you can't take it all in, but there's some great tips. And he's had some fantastic guests, Mike Hebron, Fred Shoemaker, who we were lucky enough to have Fred to come to our range, who wrote a fantastic book, Extraordinary Golf, about the joy of solid contact, the joy of enjoying the game. Mike Hebron, one of the brightest minds in American golf PGA, but's gone from being the most knowledgeable swing coach now to if you like, a professor in neuroscience and how to manage the game. So he had a superb episode with him. So those are things that off course people can do.
Manage your expectations.
And again, Adam Young, John Sherman, people like that. He's got a great book, Four Foundations of Golf, about managing your expectations. What do you realistically? You're not going to hit it out the sweet spot all the time. How are you going to practice? How are you going to approach the game in terms of you swinging, and how can you make the best use of your time? One
thing we'd all like when we're doing tips and things, like if you've got a slice, let's say, and you say, well, plan for it. Well, it's all well and good saying that. I can't plan where my ball's going to go. How do you get around that?
No, you can't. You know what your patterns are. Obviously, again, if you do a bit of research in technology these days with so many launch monitors and inexpensive launch monitors, you can look at your shot pattern and maybe in the tips later on today, things about what you really do and what you actually do. Well, of course, I hit a 7-iron 175 yards. Well, no, you don't. You might have hit one once onto a 175-yard hole, but if you actually plotted how far you carry it 150 yards or 145 yards. So some of it is ego, but some of it is,
I think that's the expectations, isn't it, as you said earlier?
We're all basing on our best swing and our best contact, which we don't necessarily make all the time. But I think, it is about managing that and managing your ball. As you say, learning. I say to most of my students, if I caddied for them, I'd get them round 5 or 10 shots less. I had it with a chap last week. We played in a charity day, and he was very nervous and a newish golfer, mad keen, spends a lot of time and money on golf. And I said to him, right, just hit it there, right, knock it down. No, don't put that away. Put that 3-wood away. Hit a 7-9 down there and flick it on the green. All of a sudden, he knocked it in for a 4. So just managing his way around the golf course is, now again, if you have a slice and you know that's your pattern, well, certainly you're going to aim left and cut it back, and then you're going to work on it with your local PGA Pro and lessons and YouTube or whatever. But I think as I say, expectation management massive. How far you think you hit it. Again, all the information's there on the info. You do some work with Shot Scope. It tells you exactly what a 5 handicapper hits off the tee. 220 yards. And what have you. It doesn't mean we don't all hit 300-yard drives now and again, but knowing how
what you
far
do,
what you do, then managing your emotions, as I say, and Carl will talk about this a lot, and I try to do it. I mean, again, sometimes it's do as I say, not as I do, or whatever. It's hard when you're like as you under the gun. Being grateful. I'm out here enjoying golf with my buddies on a great venue. I've got my health. Gratefulness is, we all beat ourselves up on the golf course, don't we?
Yeah.
Because we want to play our best. And if you kind of look at the top players, on television you see in the top 10, you don't see the guys missing the cut. You don't see the guys sat in the hotel room for 2 or 3 days waiting to get their flight. And so we're always broadcasting and seeing the winners. And it's the same at club level, of course. But you've got to be grateful and enjoy it, and sometimes that's massive from a nerves calming point of view. I think we all just don't want to make a fool of ourselves.
Yeah,
but you've got to think, hey, hang on a minute, come on.
I think those good rounds, when you ever speak to anyone, say, oh well, I went out, I've been on holiday for 2 weeks, I've not picked the clubs up, I've been busy working, went out, had no expectations, and I played great.
Yeah.
You think, right, okay, do that next time, but then it's, well, I played great last time, so let's go again. But moving on from there, if you've gone and you've played, a little bit more to your sort of potential, you're not trying to rely on your best swing every time. But if you were looking at someone as they are improving their golf swing, what's probably the one thing that every golfer should be doing or should be trying to gain consistency in? If we get loads of, I'm a slicer, I want to hit this perfect draw, but if you were looking at the golf swing, obviously they're all different, we're all different shapes and sizes, but what is one thing that all the golfers out there should be doing to try and achieve or make the most of their golf swings?
I think, and maybe it's just the era we live in, because I've kind of grown up through various eras I was very lucky to work for an old chap in one of my first jobs who was, late 70s, and he'd played in the Open Championship. He was actually born just locally from Leven here, and he was a club maker and taught me loads of things about that. But he was a kind of an old sage, Alex, and in those days, it was more about just the basics of golf. And I've been lucky enough to spend a bit of time with, the most famous coach ever, or the father of European golf, and John Jacobs. And as John, I'll kind of paraphrase, but the purpose of the golf swing was to deliver the club on the right path, if you like, with the face looking in the right direction, centre strike, and how it's done is of no importance at all, as long as you can repeat it. So I think what's happened, or we're going through an era at the moment, because not just in golf, but in most things, we can measure everything.
Yeah.
So we can measure how much force you're putting into the ground. We can measure how fast, I've got my technology there in the bay. I know how fast the club's going. I know the launch angle of the ball. I know the face's relationship to the path was X many degrees open. I know whether it was hit out the sweet spot. I know the spin rate. I know the spin axis, the vertical plane and so on. But the reality is you're swinging a lump of metal round your head, and you've got to swing that lump of metal round your head with it travelling in the right direction relative to the target. And you've got to get the face pointing in the right direction and hit it out the middle of the face at the relevant speed for the shot you're hitting. So as long as you keep doing podcasts and YouTube stuff, and as long as I keep coaching, that isn't going to change, and hasn't changed since Willie Park or old Tom Morris stood on the tee back at St Andrews there the first time in 1872. He stood there like you and me thinking, please God, let me put a good swing on it, let me make solid contact. And he's trying to move that club round his body in the right shape, with the club face looking in the right direction, and so on. Now, today's coaching and plethora of tips and so on are potentially sometimes getting further and further away from that. Right, do this with your left. What's the latest trend this year? Well, let's bow the left wrist. Let's use the ground. Well, you walked to the ball, didn't you? You were using the ground anyway. That happens. It's more of an effect. Now, if you're into force production and you kind of go down that route, great. But before you get into force production, learn to move the stick. So in answer to, it's kind of simple answer to the question, people need to get more familiar with the stick. For me. Well, what? Look at Scotty Scheffler winning last night. What's he good at? Presenting the golf stick for the required shot. So if he wants to hit it right to left, he'll move the club on a particular inside path with the face left of the path, and the ball will draw. If he wants to hit it low, he'll lean the shaft forward. If he wants to hit it high, he'll bring it in shallow. And so he's good at moving the stick, and you can see his feet are all over the place post impact and so on. But he's a great shot maker. People say, how did you play? But he's got a nice swing. But the skill in golf, once you've learnt to swing it, is to become a shot maker, isn't it? To navigate your golf ball around the golf course. So if I've been coaching a couple of players recently, 2 or 3 players who are hockey players, and they generally make good golfers because they're good at presenting the stick. So a hockey player knows he knows how to move the stick. Watch it for the views on YouTube, and move the head of the stick and the face. And tennis players, you speak to people about topspin tennis shots or cut shots, they have a bit of an empathy with that. And so you have to be very careful. As I say, in golf instruction, well, lay the club down, do this with your right elbow. They're all things to help you move the stick better and produce the desired shot. But what happens is sometimes I'll say to somebody, who's, let's say, shanking it, well, do you know where you're hitting it out, which part of the face you're hitting it? And let's try and hit it more out the toe. They go, I've never thought of that. Because if we're not careful, we become immunised. We get further...
It's awareness, isn't it? What are you doing?
Some awareness. And people like, Adam Young and so on, these guys, I say on their pods and so on, will talk about this in great depth. But you can become, as I say, immunised from the stick and the club and the ball. You're that busy thinking about everything else and 54 moves to magic golf that you thought, forgot to hit that ball with the club head. So you look at the top 10 players in the world, they all swing it differently. Tommy Fleetwood doesn't swing it like Scheffler, and so on. They're all good at moving the stick at speed, those guys. And so your viewers and listeners, they need to be aware of, or don't lose sight of what you want the golf club to do to the golf ball. Do you know what direction and path and shape of swing you're swinging in? Do you know where the club face is? Can you swing it at a reproducible pace that allows you solid contact? Because every golf pro, without a word of a lie, people come into their coaching environments and say, I want to be more consistent. And me being a smart ass, I did it yesterday with a guy. I said, oh, good. I said, well, how are you going to do that then? And he,
I'm paying you, you tell me.
They go, well, I was hoping you were going to help me. I said, well, this sounds really rude or a bit blunt. I said, but if you stand to it correctly and consistently and form your grip consistently well, and form your posture consistently well with the ball consistently in the right position, and then move the club consistently around your body in a consistent shape with the face looking in a consistently good direction, and hit the ground consistently in the right place, you're going to be consistent. And that's what I'm saying, why golf is hard. Because you've got that amalgam of multiple joints, multiple movements. But at the end of the day, going back to Bobby Jones and and his affinity for St Andrews, Bobby Jones copied his coach at the golf club. He's got his club pro, Stuart Maiden, and they say, why did Jones swing it so well? Well, his swing was a clone of the old Scottish pros, Stuart Maiden swing, so he copied his swing. So if you think, you're not fortunate enough to copy my swing because you're not that blessed.
Because I'm not that short.
You're not that short. And yeah. But copying, pre-YouTube.
Well, it's funny you say that. I remember I used to, the Ryder Cup, was it 2003 at the Belfry?
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
I think for one of my birthdays you bought me a videotape of it, so back in the old VHS days.
Yeah.
And there was a swing, Tiger on the first tee, hit 2-iron. And every day before I'd go and play or practice, all I would do, pop the VHS in, fast forward, I think he was like third group out or whatever, and he made these practice swings and they just looked incredible. I was like, right, okay, I'll just do that today.
Yeah.
And it does baffle me sometimes when you see, whatever sport it is, when you look at like, oh well, that's what they're doing on the TV, and then you go to the golf course and you see what some people are doing. You think, have you ever tried like just watch Adam Scott, watch Louis, watch Ernie? Like Ernie was my hero growing up, and then Padraig Harrington. And you think just replicate that.
Well,
obviously easier said than done.
Of course it is, but if you're good, that's where children are great copiers. As people into human development, monkey see, monkey do sort of thing. So again, I had this conversation yesterday. I said to a pal, go on the range there now and look at those 50 people swinging. And if you find two that you think, well, he's got a nice golf swing. So I say to everybody who walks in my bay, when you're on the first tee at the club or you're down the range and you look around, can you see the people who are swinging it well? And they go, oh, yeah. They'll say, oh, he's got a really nice swing. And I say to them, what do you think of Adam Scott's swing? And they go, oh, yeah, it's really nice. I say, well, why do you think it's nice? Is it the rhythm? Is it the shape? I say, you've got a television, haven't you?
Nope.
So I say, everyone's got television. Why don't they just copy good golf swings? But what happens is they want to kind of circumnavigate that and start breaking too many of the mechanics down and breaking it into too many components, if you like. So if you were good copiers, but I say to people, what you're doing doesn't look anything like Adam Scott's golf swing. It looks like you're trying to club a baby seal to death. You might have to edit that out. But because what happens is people think, well, I've got to propel that ball. So this is where we get into it's a means to an end. Golf is like ballet with a stick. So if your sole intent is to smash the living daylights out of that golf ball, you probably won't end up with something that looks like a golf swing. You go on any driving range and give a human a golf club and say, hit that down there. Unless they've copied their parents who played golf, or unless, like you've seen in this era, we've seen kids produce brilliant golf swings, and when you've said to them, where have you learned that swing? And they said, oh, I had Tiger Woods' computer game. Yeah. So subliminally, going back to you watching the video, subliminally, they've looked at that game, looked at that computer game and copied the shape and the rhythm and the timing of his golf swing. They've not necessarily broken it down, or they're not necessarily just obsessed with smashing that ball. Going back to that Ryder Cup, incidentally, I met John Jacobs down there. He was happened to be down there, and I was chatting to him on the practice ground, and Tiger was about to tee off, and he'd never seen him because he'd not travelled at that age. He was in his late 70s, whatever it was. And he said, come on, let's go and see this young fella, see if he's any good. So we wandered over to the first tee, and Tiger smashed this thing down there, and he kind of went, well, he looks all right. I think he'll be okay. Yeah. That was the kind of blessing from God. But and of course, his coach Butch Harmon was a big fan of John Jacobs. But yeah. So
what is that one thing then that all amateurs should be doing then?
I think in a nutshell, become much more aware of swinging the club. Be aware of the club face, the arc, and so on. The shape of the swing, the circle. Copy whoever you admire. On YouTube, television, or whatever. Copy their swing. Just
find a model.
Yeah, not to say a model, but
I mean a person as a model.
Yeah, a person as a model. But become more aware of the club. The club's a tool. Again, in lessons, I'll say to people, when you watch a violinist, they're good at moving the instrument. That's what they're good at. If you watch a carpenter, they're expert at using the tools. So any expert with an implement You know, that's what, and the golf stick's just an instrument, isn't it, or an implement? And this goes to chipping, to putting. You know, we'll talk about it later with tips. You know, how are you going to arrange that instrument to produce the shot you want to produce? Okay. It's not as generic as people maybe think. And we're all, again, we live in this world of formulas. You know, 3 ways to get fit, 10 ways to lose weight. You know, 5 ways to hit it further. You know, 10 ways to hit it straighter. But, you know, there isn't an easy answer to this.
No.
And, you know, so you've got to do the graft.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Very, very much so. I always remember you saying to me, like, to become a good golfer, there was always 3 skills that you needed to learn, like 3 S's. First was your strike, get consistent with your strike. Secondly was the shape, once you've learned to find the middle, find the face consistently. Right, how do you make it curve less, like left to right, then right to left, how do you hit it high? And then thirdly was your sort of your golf course
score,
spot, to score. And that's one thing that I sort of pass on to my students a lot of the time, thinking, right, okay, well, which stage are you at? Like, have you graduated lesson 1 yet? No. Right, okay, well, let's make sure, even when you watch the pros on TV, when they're not striking it well, they've still got some, you know, control of the shape, but then they rely back onto that third skill. Right, well, I'm not hitting it my best today. It's time to learn to just score. It doesn't have to be the best shot I've ever hit every single time. I'll just put it down to point A, put it up to B, chip it up to C, knock it in for D, and you go, right, okay, there you go. Well, that was a 4. Still the same 4 as someone who's maybe hit 320 down the middle, hit a wedge to 10 foot, and then
there's no pictures. There's no pictures on the scorecard. And going back to that, the 3 S's was kind of, you know, learn to swing it, then use that swinging ability to become a shot maker, i.e., start to control the ball, and then use those then to then become a scorer. Which then you go into the mental side. And shot making, kind of managing your emotions and so on. But you got to understand probably a couple of things. The golf swing's a painting that's never finished.
Yeah.
You wake up some days, your fingers feel fat, your back's like you're struggling with your back. I've got a hernia, God knows what. So you make the best of
athletes.
Super athletes. You make the best of the best job on that day. And this is the same for tour players. You know, they'll turn up some days and shoot 61, they knock the flag out, they feel great. Next day they shoot 69, 70 or whatever, don't feel as great. You are a human.
Yeah,
on the end of, you are a human on the end of a golf club. And again, going back to expectation management, people always say they hit a shot and I go, why did I do that? What happened there? I just say, it was just a crap swing. Just put another one on it. You're a human. The skill of duplicating this art is impossible. And that's where we go back to consistency, you know, and again, listening to Carl and other podcasts. You can't. It's a game of inconsistency, because you've got 14 tools, and today we'll go out there. It looks like it's windy, you know. The temperature changes, all these things. So it's not. You're not playing on the same size pitch with the same stick or bat, you know. So it is a game of inconsistency, and the sooner the golfer realises actually, this is a moving target. It's going to change every day. Let's see what I've brought today to the golf course and make the best of it. I might have a good ball striking day. I might have an indifferent one. I might be feeling stiff. I might be feeling great. You know, and of course, you might feel great for 9 holes or 8 for 13 holes, and then the wheels come off. So then you've got to have the emotional tools to handle that, the adversity that golf gives you. You know, and it's a cruel game at times, and sometimes how hard you practice doesn't relate to your performance.
It's like life.
You might see the results weeks, months later. Sometimes you practice hard for a tournament, and the other week I practiced really hard on a particular shot. I thought, this shot I'm hitting under pressure, and I keep tugging it left, right, I'm going to hit balls. And then I got on the golf course, and within 3 holes, I hit this very same shot. And the smoke was coming out of my ears. And I thought, I've stood here for a week in between lessons hitting this shot. And then I've just gone and tugged this one left. And that's at my level. So I'm thinking, God almighty. You know, so I wasn't best pleased, but just got to get back on the horse. You know, it's like riding a bike. People say, why do you do that? Will you fall off a bike? Well, you fell off, get back on it.
Yeah, go again.
So sometimes you just make poor swings.
Very true.
Just got to get on with it and play the next one. No one cares. As I said to you, I was hard on you when you were learning or we're all trying to learn, but
still
both are. But used to it's not fair, that was bad, and and I just said, no one cares. Was the wind the wrong colour? Was the grass not to your liking?
Yeah.
And it's a bit of my hero was Tom Watson. Find the ball, hit
Legend.
it, find it again, hit it again. No one bothers. We're all wrapped up in our own game to bother about who else we're playing with.
Yeah.
With the greatest respect. We've all got our own stuff to deal with.
Very, very true. Well, I think some very, very good stuff there. I think, easy just to pick a few things of make sure your expectations match your ability, and be true to actually what your level of golf is as well, and then that shape of the golf swing. We've had some questions come in from Instagram and some followers over the couple of weeks, so we just wanted to fire through these before we wrap up with you and head out to school you on the golf course. But one of the first questions was from a Colin Wallace, and I think you've pretty much answered this, but his question was, as an older golfer, 61, 18 handicapper, what is the best thing to focus on to reduce the handicap? Is it that?
Yeah, I would
be aware of your
I would say
now?
be aware of the clubs, and I'm just a little older than you, Colin, but it doesn't mean we still can't get the thing round the golf course. And obviously, I say that the whole world at the moment is all about power, and as I say, force production. But kind of, for the older golfer, get the thing in the fairway, get it on the green, get your little 7-wood, manage your golf ball round. Of course, get the basics right. If you can get a good swing shape where you can draw it and trundle it along the fairway and get a bit more out of it. But I get young guys in my bay, and every one of them with a 7-iron, a lot of them, and they're all aspiring golfers, and they're 92, 93, 94. I get some people said, you're swinging it faster than tour average, with a 7-iron, but they still can't break 80 or 90. So that's got to be more about controlling the club again and consistency and getting the thing round. So, but as an older golfer, fairways and greens, work on your short game. If you're hitting it over just 200 yards off the tee, around 200 yards, and you can chip and putt,
you'll be okay.
You can still get it round a 6,000 yard typical golf course, in good numbers. So I think older golfers, you don't want to get sucked into this. Of course, we want to hit our best shots more often, but you don't want to get sucked in so much into the power thing, but more about controlling that ball and getting it on the short stuff.
Very nice. Next one, Dear T. Lamb. As a teaching pro, what questions from a new student in advance would you think sets up a good session? What would you like them to ask as they're coming in? Not just give me the answer, give me the secret.
What do you think the student would like?
Yeah, if I'm a new student, I come in to see you, what questions should I be asking to make the most out of my session?
I think that's varied depending on, as you say, where they are. I think from the coach's point of view, they need to know how much time that player has to practice. Do they enjoy practicing? Do they just like playing? Because you do need to practice this game.
Yeah.
So I think, they may need to know how much they need to practice, what they're going to practice, of course. Again, there's tons of information about different types of practice. Should you do random practice? Should you do block practice? And everything, there's been a pendulum swing on the internet. Oh, you must do random practice because golf, all these shots are different. You must, practice, your woods and chipping and do all these different things and hit to different targets. And of course, as the great range we have, Top Tracer technology and all the technology on range these days, there's so many games that ask you to do random practice. Brilliant. That said, you need a technique first.
You need the skill.
So please, by all means, move on to random practice. But once you can stand there and hit a 7-iron or a 9-iron,
repetition,
relatively straight each time, so gain some degree of control before you then start to then try and play to different targets. I think nowadays people think, well, we'll shortcut that and go straight to random practice. But I can assure you, if you look at Hogan and Faldo and Nicholas, all the greats of the game, I've spent thousands, hundreds of thousands of hours just hitting ball after ball, to a tree, or in my day you'd hit them to a tree and have to pick your own balls up.
Yeah, that's what Faldo said to us.
Yeah. So me and my pals, we all grew up on golf courses where there was no driving ranges per se, or you had a little practice ground, because all the golf courses in the UK built around the turn of the century, the practice wasn't a thing. You had a little practice area or whatever. So we'd all hit balls with a 7-iron to a tree, and you'd go and have to pick your own golf balls up. So you became good at hitting them close round that tree, and then you'd go and chip the balls to the tree. So you were doing two things at once. You were learning how to control the club face, how to control the path, and so on. And then you'd chip them, so you were chipping them from all these random lies where the ball had finished. And I had a good session with a young man the other day, and I'm digressing, but we were talking about launch angles and tour players launching, say, a 6-iron at 14 degrees and whatever. And most people who come in my bay and they're launching a 7-iron plus 20 odd degrees. And I said, how do you think I learnt to hit it low? Because I didn't have a launch monitor. I didn't know what 14 degrees looked like, or 16 degrees.
Just did it.
So I'd read in a book I used to have in the 70s of Henry Cotton, a great English golfer, going out and sticking a shooting stick on the range ahead of him and firing balls at this shooting stick until he knocked it out with a kind of long iron. And I thought, well, I'll have a bit of that. So by doing that in a reverse engineering point of view, you end up leaning the shaft forward, maybe bowing your wrist, de-lofting the club. So you've learnt the skill backwards. It's only now I know that I can hit it 14 degrees or 10 degrees or whatever. Yeah. But I didn't know that. Neither did Tiger. Neither did Faldo. He stood there and learnt to hit it low, learnt to hit it high, learnt to move it right to left, and again he learnt how to move the stick. He made the stick make the ball do what it wanted to do.
Very true. So what should they ask you?
Forget that question. Yeah, yeah, it's not what they say. Ask. I think it's a two-way street. That I'd always ask somebody when they come in. How much? Obviously, we want to know their golfing history. Yeah. You want to
relative, isn't it?
Their job, what they're like as a personality, because that's massive. People's personalities. Some people's personalities aren't suited to golf.
No,
you can see that the way they behave. Yeah, well, you see the way they behave on a golf course. They're short-tempered, they're impatient, they may be successful. I get it with good sportsmen who come in and you ask them again. So, it's a two-way street, this. I'll find out. And I'll get people in, and I heard a few balls, and I'll say, have you played golf, or did you parent? Oh, no. I had a guy the other week, and he was bombing these 7-irons. And then I asked him, I said, have you played before? He was at university in Liverpool. And he said, no, I've only been playing 6 months. I said, have you watched YouTube? Yeah, I watched a bit of YouTube. And then it turned out he was a tennis coach. So he had transferable skills. So again, you'll see on the internet these days about getting kids to do multiple sports.
Yeah.
But, so his question is a two-way street.
Yeah.
It's more about the coach asking a bit more about them.
Yeah.
And their time availability, their time to practice, their background in sport, their personality type, and so on. And then you've got to stylize, your game, round that. But the reality is you've got to hit a lot of balls with the right basics. And
yeah, very true. Right, one last one to finish, and a quick answer, if you will, please. If you could go back and offer young Matt any advice on his game, what would it be?
Oh, my Joe, that was take up hockey.
Quit. Fish. You should have stuck to fishing.
Yeah, stuck to fishing and BMXing and so on. And that's a difficult one, isn't it? You've thrown me a curveball there. I mean, I think
one thing to improve my game. Then
I think you've done well. I think as a young Matt, you were too hard on yourself. Yeah. Psychopath, club throwing, all that usual. I used to say, "Where's that ping putter?" And then find it in the garage in two pieces. And whatever. So in the early days, you were hard on yourself. Now, whether that was you trying to please me or please people or had a reputation, I don't know. But that was never the intention. Yeah. So I think enjoy it more. Enjoy it more. I think for most people, we're not trying to. We're not trying to persecute ourselves. And again, we're back to expectation management, aren't we? Yeah. You look at Scheffler, and the guys at the top of the game. There's Tiger. They're so together, mentally, and emotionally, and they know how hard the game is. But and they work hard and so on, and I think so. That's where the kind of emotional side
so it'd be to enjoy it more
and enjoy
relax.
it. You see Scheffler there, last week or whatever, being stopped by the police and then having a baby and everything else, and still comes out and wins. So
Incredible,
that's got to be mental.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with technique.
Yeah.
It's allowing, like all of us, and hopefully today for us, giving your technique an opportunity to shine through.
Yeah.
Try to find that balance where you can encourage your best swings to happen more often. And it's tough. This is the toughest game you'll ever play. And that's why we play it.
Yeah.
Because you never know what's going to turn up today, do you?
We do not.
That's the joy of golf.
It is. Well, thank you very much for that. I think we've got a lot of insight there, and hopefully the listeners and viewers can pick some nuggets out of that and go and maybe enjoy the game a bit more and not be so hard on themselves. And if they're looking to find lessons with yourself, is it at Solid Golf on Instagram, Twitter?
Yeah, at Solid Golf on Instagram, as you say, Twitter or
Go and find yourself, see if you can get in this year
yeah.
with you.
Well, no, I'm pretty busy, so as usual. But yeah, Adrian at solidgolf.co.uk.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to head out onto the Dukes, and if you haven't already as well, make sure you're following the Dukes on all their socials and check out some of the offers that they have got going on this summer, because they're pretty good. New fleet of carts just come out here, upgraded halfway house. Course has had loads of dough spent on it, and it is looking magnificent. So we're going to go and sample the pleasures of the Dukes now, 18 holes, and then some tips. So make sure you're watching those. If you haven't already as well, do make sure you're leaving a review on the podcast. If you're listening to it on Spotify, Apple, really helps us. Follow us, and if you're on YouTube, make sure you're following the Matt Fry Golf podcast channel and also the main channel, so you don't miss our match and tips with Adrian. Thank you for that, sir.
Thank you, and sorry to rabbit on as usual.
Yeah, we'll get that Scouser Tom in next time. He's a bit more quiet.
Yeah, you'll be able to edit all that rubbish out.
No, we don't edit this one. Right, thank you, and we'll see you next week for your next episode.